We're going to start in about 1 minute. Would everyone please take their seats? Thank you. That I don't. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Lauer,
Here.
Alderman Sage,
Here.
Alderman Malumboy,
Here.
Alderman Burgess,
Here.
Alderman Painter,
Here.
Alderman Schmidt,
Here.
Alderman Black,
Here.
Alderman Hallman,
Here.
Alderman Fruin,
Here.
Mayor Renner.
Here. Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and start out with public comment, just so that everyone is clear. You can speak up to 3 minutes. And as another opportunity, just to clarify, we do have a mayor's open house from 4:30 to 5:30 every Friday before a regularly scheduled Monday City Council meeting. We meet right in the fishbowl, and you can get answers in real time. If you want to exchange ideas or throw ideas out, it doesn't have to be on the agenda. Just if you want immediate answers, that's great. Here, it is a one-way communication. Okay, so we're going to start out with Dan Metz and then Mark Johnson. So if you can be prepared to come forward. Thank you.
Good evening. I just have a concern, well, a few. One is about the increase in the rental registration fees from $30 to $65. And in my case, some of my buildings, that's more than that. It's up to $95, which is 100, 200, 300% increase. It's really not the money that bothers me. It's just that why have we been singled out as property owners? I mean, when you raise the sales tax, you raised it 1% or 20 or 15%, whatever that comes to compared to what it was. But there's a significant increase over, well, from what we're paying, and I see here that one of the goals is to provide the department PACE with adequate resources to do what they're supposed to do. I'm not sure what that is, but I don't think even that's going to be enough money to do that, especially if you're going to hire another inspector at a 6-income figure with pension and health pennies and the vehicle and all those things. I just don't see it working out. I think the program we have now, though adequately unfunded, is working fine. Complaint-orientated enforcement. And those properties that you know are bad, you should go after those properties, those property owners. And I have a list. I'd be happy to share it with you. I haven't seen much change in the 8 years this program has been in effect. Same neighborhoods, same buildings have junk in them. Same social problems still exist with those buildings. And another thing, it seems like this is just going to get passed on to the tenants, the renters, the poor people who pay. Not all renters are poor, but this is just one more fee they're stuck with, and it seems like the city council is waging a war on our working families, and at some point something has to give. And another issue I have is parking, particularly over in the Demons Grove area. It would be nice if there was some way to enforce proper parking, perhaps painting lines on the street like they have downtown, so the guy who drives around and issues those tickets can hit those neighborhoods too. Because we have a guy, he's got a contracting business, lives right across the street from one of my buildings. He has 4 company vehicles, two full-size trucks with a passenger cab and 2 cargo vans. And when he parks those on the street, the people that live there have nowhere to go. His employees park them, they take off. But, I mean, they're not there over 24 hours, but sometimes they park in such a way that if they would have parked a little bit more careful, they could have, someone else could squeeze in. That's my concerns, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Again, Mark Johnson, and then Gary Lambert, and Alton Franklin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Johnson. I am an elected county board member for McLean County, for those that do not know. I am coming tonight on my own accord. I am not friends with any bar owners, but I am an Uber driver. I've spent 100 weekends in downtown at bar closing time. I have seen what's going on downtown. I've done 1,100 trips in Bloomington Normal in the last 10 months. And when I heard that the council was looking to raise fees on liquor license to offset the amount of police presence that needs to be in downtown Bloomington on the weekends to do crowd control, and by no means the men that serve down there and are doing what they're told to do. I'm not here to point fingers at all, but I am here to enlighten from an Uber driver who, from the perspective of my windshield and being there at closing time, what the main problem is. In my time there and being downtown at those times, I've seen the police break up one major fight, which involved needing about 5 or 6 officers. It was 1 block north of Fat Jack's. And I saw one fight broken up by bouncers in front of Fat Jack's as well. I Ubered a bouncer the other night from Fat Jack's and asked him, do the bouncers break up more fights than the police? And he said, absolutely. Again, why? Because they're there and they're able to respond more quickly. That's how most law enforcement issues are handled. My point on all of this is that if I am a bar owner and you're going to raise my liquor fees, there's no reason why I need to be paying bouncers to do anything, and I'll just wait for, since the council wants to outsource security to the police, I'll wait for the police to show up and I'll end up cutting my bouncers that are on scene. That's how I think a business owner would react, and I'm not one, and I'm not speaking for them, but I thought the council should be made aware. I'm not here to point fingers. I'm not here to complain. I met with Alderman Black, Alderman Lauer, city staff Steve Rasmussen back in November, council and Checker Cab, and myself as a member of the Uber community, if you will. We sat and said that we need to change parking. As far as I see it, at bar closing time, it's not beer bottles being thrown through windows and people bashing each other in the nose and cars being vandalized. What is going on is a crowd control problem. And if the crowd control can be handled more efficiently, and I believe it needs to be handled efficiently by dealing with the parking issue and how people are picked up, then you will be able to handle 90% of the problem, and the bar owners won't have to have their liquor licenses increased. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Again, Gary Lambert and Alton Franklin, and then Judy Stearns.
Good evening. Back in early December, I was at one of the Friday afternoon mayor's meetings, and I asked the question if any of the enterprise funds had been used for other purposes. Now, as I recall, the mayor responded saying that he didn't think they had been, or he wasn't aware, and perhaps were not even legal. Mr. Rasmussen said that if they had occurred, they had all been repaid, like if there was a loan between one fund and another that had been repaid. Shortly after that, I heard from some other people that said they weren't convinced that that was the case. So I asked my alderman if he could please check into that and find out what the true story was. He responded back very quickly and said that he had been in touch with Patty Lynn. This was middle to late December, and said that she was going to be on the agenda and present a short presentation on that, as other people inquired also. This is the last meeting in January. She's not on the agenda. I still don't have an answer if funds with positive balances are being used to subsidize others. I think we need an answer. Another question that I've had, mentioned it a few times before, 2.5 years ago, we decided we weren't going to fund road maintenance out of our general fund. We issued the $10 million bond, and it took us 2 years to spend that. That's fine. But we're out of money now. We are still paying and will still be paying on that bond for some extended period of time. I don't know the number of years. But now we're going to issue another bond, I understand, 25 to 35 million. I don't know what the number is. And it's been estimated that perhaps we will spend that in a period of 4 years. My question to the council is, what are you going to do in year 5? Another tax increase for another bond? We just keep going in debt. Thank you.
Okay, the next is Elton Franklin and Judy Stearns and Patricia Martin.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Elton Franklin. I live at 508 Patterson Drive here in Bloomington, Illinois. I know I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again because apparently it hadn't sunk in. If you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you should do is stop digging. Lo and behold, I'm looking through the materials for today, and I see we've got a closed session, of which one of the glaring items to me was a purchase lease agreement. Now, I recognize that there are opportunities, but that's something that people with money in their pocket look for. That's not what people with a $3 million structural deficit do. You take care of the bills that you owe first. That's the name of the game. This is not some kind of game that we're playing. Just to emphasize that point, it is something that hasn't registered apparently, that this stuff, that's real money. You talk to some of the folks that I know, and I doubt running the same social circles as most of the council here. They're hurting. And I've said this before, and I'm going to keep on saying it until somebody finally registers it on their conscious mind and starts to take some visible action to move us back to solid financial territory. It's a sad statement that you've got kids in a candy store instead of a city council. I've said before, do something. I had to go back and correct that. Something constructive, something positive, something that benefits the citizens of this fair city. All that's happened to this point, as Mr. Lambert and others have alluded to, is you're hurting them. Just because the people have checks doesn't mean the city still has money to spend. Simple point in fact, you got to take care of what you owe first before you start leasing the future. The grandkids and the great-grandkids, most likely, are going to be paying for the mistakes. Let's try to minimize those mistakes. I don't like to be Mr. Glum. I would like to bring up one very positive thing. I'd like to commend, I talked with Alderwoman Baragas before the meeting, and I want to say it in public. I think that what she did in drawing attention to the soil plume and getting people focused on that to be sure that things were taken care of, I wish could have happened with Sugar Creek, and I hope we will see in the future that attention is paid to that, because it's a serious concern for me. I have cause to be worried about it because I have a personal experience. I have health problems. More important than that, there's a lot of kids that have health problems too as a result of contamination of the groundwater and all the things that go with that. Please, folks, think a bit. Bring us back to the positive. Act like adults. Thank you.
Judy Stearns and then Patricia Martin.
Thank you. I'm here tonight to talk about a couple of aspects of the landlord increase in the fees and the resurrection, I guess, of the inspection program that the paragraph said was sponsored mostly by Amelia Burgess and Karen Schmidt. That's the paragraph, maybe, you know. But at any rate, I'd like to comment on landlords as a group and say that they are business owners. Might surprise you, but business owners providing a service, and in many cases a very necessary service and a very much appreciated service. And yet, instead of taking a positive kind of approach, I brought some pictures tonight. And what I have for you is a before and after, because and I say this respectfully, expect you to drive around and see things like this. But I brought two examples. Property that went through 7 years of city inspection, and this was the improvement that we got from that. Obviously, the history of the inspection program hasn't even been discussed. But I assure you that properties, most of them got worse and worse. Some closed. And this is what we got. But a landlord, totally on their own, without any assistance from the city at all, without any assistance from anyone, brought it back to a beautiful property. And the ripples throughout the neighborhood are unbelievable. The good this does can't even be quantified. So where's the award? Where's the thanks? Where's the appreciation from the city for this kind of thing? And this is by far not the only one. Respectable and good landlords put tenant safety first, foremost. They would be crazy not to. They know how important tenant safety is. So if you think this is about tenant safety, this is not about tenant safety. But I am going to pass these around. It's just sad that you fail to appreciate and understand a very important business segment and the good that they do in this community. That, you know, you believe in tax credits for all kinds of businesses and all kinds of economic development, but this goes completely unrewarded, completely unappreciated. Maybe you need to rethink this. This person should get an award or something. At one point, the deal was that let me pass these around. There's two of them. And unfortunately, I only have 10. Sorry. Take one of each. But just to close, the other aspect of this, you have got a war on poor people in this city. The regressive tax, if you don't know the definition, the taxes that you impose that hurt people who can least afford it, and that's what you're doing over and over. Sales tax, gas tax. The tenants in these apartments are working in fast food. They're working in, that's becoming your major employer. You know, the food segment, the service segment, lowest possible income that you can find. Those are the tenants. And the landlords cannot provide a good service without passing some of this along. It's just, it's business people. And those are the people that you're hurting the most. You have a war on poor people, so please don't talk about living wage. Don't talk about affordable housing. Don't. Because you are ruining it with 100 and 200% increases in registration fees. And I guess my time's up. Thank you.
Okay. Patricia Martin.
Okay, good evening. I'm going to talk briefly about legal changes in the states that could benefit older people and that have recently been put into effect or will shortly go into effect, we hope. One is the use of audiovisual devices in nursing homes to protect residents from possible abuse. This was instigated by the Attorney General's office and initially presented and passed at a Public Health Committee meeting last May in Springfield. As of this year, the proposal has now become a law. I'm fortunate enough to attend first at the recommendation of Senator Mattie Hunter. I also got to meet one of the Attorney General's assistants that I had all happy, obviously, with the end result. Another new law, sponsored by Senator Daniel Biss from Evanston, has helped establish a program called Silver Search, intended to further develop surveillance for confused seniors. Dan Brady, our representative, is a House sponsor, and the state police are involved in this as well. Our own Bloomington police have a community watch program which can cover a variety of needs, and you can get the contact information for your watch area from Officer Sarah Mayer, which I just did myself this morning. I'm also encouraging members of the website Nextdoor to develop similar neighborhood programs, social and otherwise, focusing on the elderly. And this section, called Neighborhoods and the Elderly, began developing slowly but now has about 15 interested parties, and we're planning a meeting in the future, and this also deals with protection, not just social life, and I'm very, very happy about that. The continued promotion of the stability of the DON score, which sets standards for the disabled and elderly in need of community care programs, has been passed by both houses. If the score can be stabilized, and the magic number appears to be 29 at the moment, current and future participants will not lose their benefits. I also went to a presentation of this myself at a Human Services Committee meeting last fall in Springfield and gave testimony as to my own needs. The bill is now in the Rules Committee, and I just got a letter from Representative Laura Fine, the co-sponsor, telling me that she'll be working for its passage in the upcoming session. And I have offered again to advocate for this passage because I'm most concerned about situations like the Lutheran Social Services cuts mentioned recently in the press. Close to 5,000 people have been negatively affected by this. Finally, I would encourage those of you in the audience and elsewhere with specific concerns to make their own contacts here and in Springfield. Senator Jason Barrickman introduced me to the Attorney General's office and the Illinois Department on Aging, and I continue my contacts with them. He was also the sponsor of a House bill amending the Criminal Code of 2012 regarding abusive issues, both financial and physical, affecting the senior citizens and the disabled, and this bill again has just become a law. So I have received suggestions from a variety of sources in our state, community, and county. They're all there to help you, and they will also inspire you, and I appreciate your support too. And finally, very quickly, Dante Latson of the YWCA, Martin Ross of Not in Our Town, and myself are also beginning to put together an awareness program regarding elder abuse using poster displays in public places like buses and libraries frequented by the elderly in this community. And we will tell you more about it as it develops, and Martin has come up with some really stunning posters.
Great.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Appreciate it. We're going to move right along here to the presentation of commission certificate to Officer Jeffrey Widmer in recognition of completing his probationary period. And I'd like to ask him and the chief and others to come forward.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and citizens. Here before you tonight, we have Officer Jeffrey Widmer and his wife, Amanda, and his son, Caleb, who has been very patiently waiting.
Come on up. Come on up. Come on up.
Officer Widmer started in law enforcement in 2004, where he worked for the Indianapolis PD for 7 years. He then moved on to the greater Memphis, Tennessee area, where he actually worked for South Haven, Mississippi, which is just outside of there, for 3 years before coming to Bloomington PD. Even though he's done this travel, he actually attended high school at Lincoln Community High School and attended ISU, where he graduated in 2003. Spends most of his free time with his family, makes frequent trips back to Mississippi to visit his son's pet bull, named Buzz Lightyear. He and his wife enjoy watching movies and TV at home, and they also do a lot of cooking together, whether it's for the entire family or just them. And Officer Whitmer also enjoys playing Lego Dimensions with his son on the Xbox. So we hope he's done traveling. He's done a good job, and proud to have him with Bloomington PD. So
Thank you. If you, please come forward. And you can bring your family with you, too. Come on forward. Buzz Lightyear, huh? That's cool. Cool. Just wanted also to clarify that there's a picture of the City Hall and Police Station, approximately 1882. Looks like it's actually bigger than our collective headquarters today. Anyway, this is a police officers commissioned by authority of the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners of the City of Bloomington in the County of McLean in the state of Illinois. We do hereby certify that Jeffrey Widmer, having been duly sworn, was appointed and commissioned as a police officer on the 23rd day of June 2014. As evidence thereof, we set our hand and seal to this. Congratulations. Thank you for all you're doing for us, man. Thank you.
Come on around, man.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for other officers who came as a show of support. Thank you so much. Obviously a great team that we have protecting our community. I next have a proclamation declaring February 6, 2016 as WGLT Public Radio Day. And do we have someone here to accept this? Come on forward. Thank you. Please come on up.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you. Thanks for coming. We're very happy to do this. It's a proclamation declaring February 6, 2016 to be WGLT Public Radio Day. Whereas WGLT's first broadcast from Illinois State University was February 6, 1966, a while ago, and WGLT has been serving the university ever since. WGLT stands for Gladly Learn and Teach, inspired by the university's motto, Gladly We Learn and Teach. And whereas WGLT has served Central Illinois with comprehensive local, national, and international news, information, and entertainment for 5 decades, whereas WGLT News has been honored by scores of awards for excellence in broadcast journalism, including 96 Regional Associated Press Awards, 34 regional and 5 national Edward R. Murrow Awards, 6 regional and 2 national UPI Awards, and 4 national awards from Public Radio News Directors Incorporated. And a couple more whereases here. Whereas WGLT has acted as a catalyst for McLean County's thriving arts and culture community by bringing award-winning artists, speakers, and performers to Central Illinois. And whereas with financial support from the community it serves, WGLT has grown to become more than radio, connecting Central Illinois to the wider world through ideas, engagement, and entertainment. Now, we shift from a wherefore to a therefore. Therefore, I, Terry Renner, Mayor of the City of Bloomington, do hereby proclaim February 6, 2015 as WGLT Public Radio Day in the City of Bloomington, and I encourage all citizens to recognize the positive impact of WGLT's world-class public radio programming and public events. Congratulations. Thank you. Sure. Awesome. Oh, actually, that's mine. Thank you very much. Moving right along, we go to the consent agenda. Are there any items that any member of the council would like to have removed for separate consideration from the consent agenda?
Mayor, I would like to remove 7C.
7C. Okay. Okay. Are there any other items? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with the exception of item 7C?
Make that motion, Mayor.
Moved by Alderwoman Schmidt, second by Alderwoman Howman. Alderman Fruin?
Thank you. With regard to the consent agenda, I have not received any monies or financial benefits from any of the individuals or organizations referenced in each of these specific agenda items. Thank you.
Okay. And If everyone will go ahead and vote, obviously an aye is in favor of passing the consent agenda as presented, except for 7C. The motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce. Madam Clerk, thank you very much. Okay. Alderman Fruin, 7C.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the staff recommendation to replace 2 of our cars with 2 utility vehicles in the police department.
So you're making a motion in favor of 7C?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just wrong.
Well, he wants to discuss it. Okay. Is there a second? Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Alderwoman Schmidt. Alderman Fruin?
And Mayor, my comment is simply not a groundswell, but a couple public comments that I've heard over a period of time. Don't know if it's accurate, but the perception is that we continue to add a few more utility vehicles to our fleet. I think there's a greater presence of utility vehicles on the street. And I think there's also a perception that utility vehicles require more gasoline, et cetera. So I think a little bit of a public perception that are we doing the right thing by replacing cars with SUVs? I don't have enough information to respond to the people that asked me that question, so I see the chief's here, so maybe
You
we
want
can
to
comment
just
on that.
clarify?
I'm not intending this to be a discussion, because I support this, but I just want to make sure that you have the opportunity to respond.
Well, I will tell you that a majority of our fleet will eventually be SUVs because of inclement weather. It helps us respond better to citizens when in need. And even, it's funny, but it's not funny, but last year we had 2 vehicles, cars, come out of our parking deck and slide back down the hill and get in crashes. So, besides the fact that we have more equipment these days, they're making some of these cars, it's very hard. We have officers of different sizes. It just makes sense. There are a lot of other agencies, too, that are going to the sport utilities. And actually, I'm not going to name the ones, obviously, that we have, but in comparison, it's not like we're getting large Tahoes. The larger size ones, the gas mileage is not really that much more, but it's more for being able to respond duly when we can, and also to accommodate, the officers. So a combination thereof.
That's very helpful. I appreciate it, and that's good information for the public to know as questions are asked of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, I actually do have a little bit of,
excuse me.
I don't have, no questions for you. I just, to defend the department, at least in the Ford line for sure, I can vouch for that. They're actually a little bit more fuel efficient than the 2 vehicles that we're replacing, and they're more durable. And I can show and fill you in on the details there if you'd like, so thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. All right. At this point, if there aren't any other comments, if we could go ahead and vote, an aye would be in favor of item 7C from the consent agenda. Nay would be, of course, in opposition. The motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. All right. We'll move now into our single item of our regular agenda, and that's consideration of approving an ordinance prohibiting the use of groundwater as a potable water supply and approving a highway authority agreement, leave-in-place agreement at 1331 North Linden Street actually that's not in Ward 7, right?
Correct, it's in Ward 4.
That's right. I'm sorry. Okay. I still have the old one in front of me.
That's all right.
Okay, at this point, let me ask, we're going to go ahead and start with your presentation, and then we'll see what kind of motion we have.
Thank you. Mayor and City Council, tonight we do bring before you an issue that was here before. My thanks, we actually had the opportunity, this is polled, we did a lot of additional research into this issue. Ground contamination, anytime you say the word ground contamination, that does, it invokes a lot of primitive thought. You really think, oh, this is really, it gets you some visceral feelings because it can impact a lot of people. Then you add into that creek. You've got Sugar Creek 275 feet away. You add into that, there is a daycare center even, within a rock's throw of the site. So this is at the southeast corner of Linden and Towanda. The whole process is important to note. This is regulated by the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. Up until this point, all of the work that had been done had been in compliance with that, but we just wanted to make sure, and again with the additional direction of Alderman Burgess, that additional kind of digging in a little bit more. Tonight, a little bit later, you've got the ability, Peggy Silzer is here from Midwest Environmental Consulting as well. I believe she's in the audience. I didn't have the chance to thank you. So Peggy is out there. I knew them. My thanks to her for coming, invited her, didn't have a chance to talk with her before, but she's here as well. This is her line of work. I deal more with other aspects, so my thanks to her for coming. So in brief, let's go through this a little bit. So, we know that the ground contamination is a natural product of what we deal with our vehicles. Any type of the gasoline has the byproducts of benzene as you get into the more of the soils and the contamination associated with that. There are hundreds of sites throughout the country dealing with this type of issue. If you think about all of the different underground storage tanks that there were in this country, especially, pre-1990s, a lot of those didn't have necessarily the regulatory multiple different layers and protection that the current systems have. And so you do have a lot of leaking underground storage tanks. So with this site in particular, with the Freedom Oil location, there are a number of things that we are thankful for. This could have been necessarily worse than what it was for that, so to speak. In this case, during 1988, there was a state fire marshal. They had noticed some additional issues with odor and also from the site with overfill of the tank, and so the gasoline tank in the ground. And so because of that, they went ahead and started monitoring. They put in wells, testing wells back then, and they were able to identify that there was some plume that they did need to address. You can see there's some additional information in your packet on that. In 2011, they did additional testing. So again, more than that, that quite a bit of difference between 1988 and 2011. So you did have that length of time. That testing showed that the plume hadn't been spreading. The big concern from staff's perspective is there any concern from the creek? Are we going to have, are we looking at a massive fish killer? Kids that are going to be playing in the creek, are they going to be exposed to anything? So those are the kind of issues we really wanted to make sure of from a base level that were addressed. Tonight, we are looking to ask your action on a city ordinance prohibiting groundwater wells. And so what this is models something that's an ordinance that's requested by the EPA as part of their process, a standard ordinance. We use their language. And what it does is it prohibits something that we already prohibit, thankfully. You can't have a groundwater well in the city of Bloomington, but this takes that additional action. I guess maybe some communities at one point said, we want to allow groundwater wells, and they needed an extra ordinance to make sure that didn't happen. But for whatever reason, they want that extra protection. There also is a highway agreement that they're asking for. This next slide kind of gives you some overview of, there's a lot of different controlling agencies with this. Again, that state fire marshal, the IEMA, Illinois Environmental Management Agency, and again, the IEPA. The acronym they use for this, which is interesting, it's a TACO. So, tiered approach to corrective action objectives, which again, struck me as funny. I guess taco has a couple different, they left out a couple words to make it taco, but nonetheless, that's the process that they go through in order to really make sure that all of the contamination had been dealt with. So this was a Tier 1 site, so there was no need to remove or treat the soil. There are other areas in the community where removal of soil was needed. I was involved in the quality oil site on the southwest part of the community where all the soil did have to be removed. Or there are cases where we have to treat the soil. So in this case, though, there is one modification to your council packet that we did have. I want to thank Jeff Juergens. He reached out to one of the environmental attorneys in his group and asked for, are there any other things that communities they have seen have required? And this is something the city of Bloomington has not done, but there is something new that we would be asking you to consider, different than we have done in the past. This is a newer practice. Again, my thanks to Jeff Juergens and with Sorley Northrop as well. But we're asking for a reimbursement agreement to be tied to the Highway Authority agreement. we're going to be asking, in front of you, there's a modified motion we're asking for your consideration of. Jeff can answer any questions, as can Peggy with specifics. But what this is basically dealing with is, if we have to dig in the right-of-way, we have a highway authority agreement, if our crews dig or if other people dig, that soil, we want to make sure it's removed properly and disposed of properly. That's additional cost for the city. Can we recapture that cost? Yes. And so we're asking for the consideration of tying this to that highway authority agreement. Initially, Freedom Oil has expressed agreement that they would, that they understand that as a condition. This would be tied to Freedom Oil and Freedom Oil alone. It is not, we have not, apparently it's difficult to bind it upon successors of the property, but for the current owner, we are able to do that. So we're at least thankful for that. It is something different than we've done in the past. So with that, we wanted to also point out the other sites in Bloomington that we do currently have, some older, some newer. And again, past this, at this point, we'd like to ask what questions you have. There have been a number of questions that have come up. We've talked about things with the council, questions that have come up even down to an owner in this area. Do they have to identify anything on their, they sell their home, do they have to tie anything to it? And the answer was they looked into that, and we're not required, there's nothing required as part of that. Each of those people can, again, seek their own counsel as well for any additional directive they have. At this point, what questions can myself, Peggy with Midwest Environmental, or Jeff Juergens, what can we help answer?
Questions? Alderman Fruin?
Jeff, Jim, one question, and
That's not an
maybe you
insult,
can
okay.
defer this to another time if you don't answer tonight. It's not on point with contamination of soil, but I don't know enough about our old gas station properties in the brownfields or whatever you want to call them. It seems to me that government, whoever government is, must make it difficult for property owners to rehab that property. And we see old gas station lots all over town, probably throughout the state of Illinois. And it'd be nice to have an answer to that from economic development, from a helping the city grow aspect. I don't know if you know anything about that. If you can give me a short answer tonight.
Help me out. So that your question is, why is it so expensive, or how can we help? Again, if you could rephrase that.
How can we
please.
help reuse these old gas station lots?
Okay.
So here's a great example. You drive down Main Street,
Yeah.
you pull up, you're starting to look at Gailey Eye Clinic, and at the corner there, it's the northwest corner, was an old gas station, and that little corner of that block, it just sits there without...
One of the last full service gas station in the community.
We
Yep.
could name dozens of them around the community, but it'd be sure nice to rehab those to a new use.
So the question is, what can the city do? There are a couple things the city can do. All of them, it's tough to make a statement like this tonight, but I'd be hesitant to do. There's a lot of cost that can be associated with remediation. So one of the things that's one of the reasons they stay vacant for so long. There is a lot of cost with testing. You can see the length of time that is involved. There are funds. Again, the Lust Fund, leaking underground storage tanks, does have some funding associated with it. Again, this is outside of my necessary expertise, so we can look into that to make sure to answer that. The other aspect is liability. A lot of people that we've talked to, I've heard over the years, struggle with those sites from a liability standpoint. I can build it, but am I liable at some point if the IEPA says, now you can't just leave it in place, you've got to excavate it? And that's some of that hesitancy is what comes up. At least those are the reasons I've heard.
Other questions? Alderwoman Burgess?
I have a question. We have two maps included in our packet this evening, one dated March 18th, 2011, and one dated December 5th, 2011. And maybe I'm just not understanding the maps, but it seems to me that these are different.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering how the conclusion is made that the plume is now stable based on these maps.
And this is the wonderful joy of having Peggy Silzer here, who helped put those together. Peggy, would you be able to come up to, do we have to ask for, is this okay for Peggy to be able to come up and speak? Okay, thank you.
I need to see which ones you're looking at.
You're welcome to take my packet if you'd like. Yeah. I'm just... Oh, okay. If you could just help explain to us what we're looking at.
Okay. The figure 3 is the plume in the soil, and the figure 7 is the groundwater model. They're not the same. They're not even showing the same thing. They're totally different things.
And the EPA requires that we draw our plumes from clean boring to clean boring. So where the outside of that shape goes through those dots are clean. So it's within that confined, within that area that's shaded. Over here with them on 7, the model is the shaded area of the groundwater plume, and the hatched, see that shape there? That's if I have to draw the model like the plume like the EPA requires me to do by drawing it clean to clean to clean. So the model is actually smaller than what I have to draw because I can't go in that building and put wells in there. I have
I'm
to
sorry.
model to do that.
I lost you. Can we pull up on the PowerPoint which ones the maps we're talking about?
I will do my best. I'm gonna have to get onto the,
I got that one.
this is a presentation, so it's separate than the council packet.
Oh, okay, we don't
This
have
is
that in
included
there.
the council packet.
Because I got figure 7. Is it the one that's in the slide a little higher? Because that kind of...
Oh, you wanna try, okay, I can,
Right.
do you think about this one, Scott?
Yeah, that's the one, right?
That's the water one.
Right, okay. Sorry,
Yeah,
I just want to make sure I'm on the same
that's
page
the,
here.
that shows a couple things. You see the line, the big shape there? That one shows the area that we need the highway authority agreement. That's what's hatched on there.
You want
The
me to use
bigger
the mouse?
line is, oh, okay, yeah.
Use the mouse.
This
Point it
bigger
out.
line here, that's if I draw the plume from clean well to clean well, and this shaded area here is the actual model using the taco process, using the information that we have from the borings and the wells that are on site to actually model where the plume would go. So what it basically shows is that the model actually fits the plume actually pretty well. It goes to the same, well, it's actually less, but it doesn't go outside it. Sometimes in other sites it goes outside it. So this shows that it has stabilized because the plume, the model, they're very conservative and very strict, and it's actually within what we could do physically at the site with the constraints that we had for drilling to actually delineate it. Does
That makes
make
sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alderman Burgess?
So is this data, I assume, is being compared to previous data to determine that the plume is now stable? Is that how that works? Or is it just because it matches the model of what you're expecting the plume to look like when it stabilizes? That's what's not clear to me. How do you make the determination that it's stable? Oh, that it's stable? Okay. We originally took samples here in 2004 and then took them again in 2011. And the plume had not moved beyond, we'd actually moved out farther from where we started, and the plume hadn't gotten there. Okay, so there's a comparison to a map that we just don't have. Yeah. Okay. And my final question, because I get this a lot from residents, and it may be you, it may be Jim Karch who can answer it, or hopefully one of you can, is how long will the contaminants be in the soil until they either dissipate or break down or in some way return to normal? Is that what is expected over time, and how long will that process take? It is what expected over time. I couldn't give you a time frame on that at this point in time. Plumes like this, whoops, sorry. There's microbes in the soil and other processes that go on to where the plume reaches an equilibrium point where it's being retreated as just at the same rate that it's being going forward, and then it doesn't move anymore because it's reached that point where that's going on at the same rate, so it doesn't advance. And this plume has reached that spot for now. I can't tell what's going to happen in the future, We could, I just don't know. But yeah, I don't have any time frame on that. I do not believe the model takes into account, actually it does. It takes in attenuation, natural attenuation, degradation into account when you model the plume. I'll admit, I don't understand all the equations, I just know how to use them, so I'm not exactly sure how that all fits in, but the models are pretty strict. And this is unusual that I actually modeled a plume that wasn't bigger than what my actual data showed. So that tells me that it is stabilized.
Alderman, oh, Kevin, sorry, Alderman
Yeah,
Lauer. and
maybe
then-
just so the public can kind of quantify this a little bit, I think we've got some idea, but parts per million in terms of severity and what the EPA would require for remediation, at what limit would they allow this and what limit, just so that we can kind of weigh how many grains of sand are actually out there that are compared to...
Oh, okay. When you go out to a site and do an investigation, you're looking to compare your results against a Tier 1 criteria for cleanup objectives that they set out in the TACO. So if you have groundwater and there's contamination in the groundwater, its benzene is the lowest one, and it's 5 parts per billion is what the Tier 1 cleanup objective is. Now, from that process, they let you go on to, if you're above the Tier 1, they actually make you now calculate Tier 2. So Tier 2 uses different equations and your concentration, and you look at the actual soil types at the site, how much carbon's in the soil, because it acts like, just like when you clean your fish filter, it does the same thing in the soil. And if there's a lot of, so a lot of factors play into that. And then you calculate those, and if your concentrations are below your Tier 2, that based on their Tier 2 equations, then you're good. Now, on this site, for the for on-site, the highest concentration in the groundwater for the benzene is significantly more than 5 parts per million.
Right.
It's 3.8 parts per million. That's still a lot less. It's still dissolved gasoline, and in my experience, it's really not that bad.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Alderman Black.
Thank you, and thank you for the information. So to kind of summarize here, we looked at some reports from 2004 that's not necessarily in the packet here that showed that as of today, the plume has shrunk and is definitely not expanded. Is that correct?
I don't know about shrinking. I just know it's not advancing.
It's not advancing.
It's stabilized.
So, okay, and there is no immediate public health threat.
The other thing you have to do with TACO is eliminate the exposure pathways. There are no exposure pathways in this area.
So there's no way for this toxin to get out into the public. Is that what you're...
Right.
Okay.
Nobody's drinking the groundwater. There are no wells that anybody's pulling groundwater out of. Once you get off of the site, it's actually in the groundwater, and you're down 8 to 10 feet. So there's 8 to 10 feet of clean material between the surface and the top of the groundwater where the contamination is. So you've also got that as an added benefit. Plus you've got the pavement on the streets, you've got the pavement on the sites. All that stuff is taken into consideration when they eliminate exposure pathways.
Gotcha. Okay. So taking this action is not in any way, shape, or form jeopardizing future residents or anybody. We're just trying to close this matter up. Correct?
Right.
Okay. That answers my question.
Can I ask, while Ms. Silser's here, I was going to ask her one other question that had come up. I recall, since 2011, when this last testing was done, there's some new requirements. Could you talk to the council about some of that, the vapor criteria that they now test for that this will go through?
Yeah, we will have to go back. They've added a indoor vapor inhalation exposure pathway elimination to this site since I wrote this report. So what we'll have to do probably is, well, not probably, we'll have to go back to the site and take a soil gas vapor sample. A soil gas sample, I'm sorry, and submit that. And then that's all in the tier 2 or the TACO also. There's a table in there that I'll have to compare the results against, and then if that doesn't
fit the results, and I can go to Tier 2 and calculate, and if that doesn't work, then there'll have to be some kind of vapor mitigation for the building. I have no idea how it'll do. This is a really new thing, and a lot of us haven't done a lot of it yet. I've only done 2, so.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to add?
Just one other thing, the thing that Ms. Seltzer was looking for before for that Tier 1 level, the Tier 1 threshold level for construction worker actually ingesting benzene at a site is 2,300 parts per million. The level at Freedom was 1.85 parts per million, so that does give some context. At least that's helpful to 2003. Again, I'll let you comment about that.
Yeah, that was the soil. I was considering
hard
the
to find
groundwater.
out.
So yeah, the soil is different. The levels are of course higher. I went with the most stringent, which is the benzene in the groundwater. So.
Other questions? Alderwoman Burgess.
Yeah, and this is for Jim, just to make sure I understand, because I think this is a point that I didn't understand when this first came to us, and was one of the questions I had, is whether or not this was the final action, or whether or not this was just one more step in the process. And now my understanding is this is one step in the process. Once this is completed, the IEPA will fully review this file and make sure that this site is in compliance with all current regulations.
That is accurate.
All right, thank you.
Okay. At this point then, is there a motion? Alderwoman Burgess.
Yes, and I'll just read from here. I move that the groundwater ordinance be passed and the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute the necessary documents, and that contingent upon receipt of a fully executed reimbursement agreement from Freedom Oil in a form approved by the Corporation Council and executed by the city manager, the highway authority agreement be passed and the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute the necessary documents.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Painter. Any further discussion? Okay, if you just go ahead and vote, an aye is obviously in favor of this motion that was made by Alderwoman Burgess. The motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. And we now move to City Manager's discussion.
Mayor, I have nothing new or different to report tonight. So.
Okay. It's under Mayor's discussion. The only things that I want to do is, first of all, thank Alderman Scott Black for handling the open house on Friday, Mayor's open house. I very much appreciate that, and I understand that there's a couple of other women there. I appreciate it. I was, at that point, I thought I would still be in the U.S. Conference of Mayors, but at that point I was only about, by the time you adjourned, I was probably about 3 hours away from Illinois' border. It basically abandoned ship. We did meet with the President and the Cabinet on Thursday, the mayors, and they Mayor of Washington declared a state of emergency, and that they were shutting down the metro, and that they were expecting between 24 to 30 inches. And having been stranded in Washington for 2 days because of 3 inches of snow, I said, I'm getting the car and I'm getting out of here and coming back to the heartland, and that's where I am, rather than inside the Beltway. So I'm very happy. Also, I want a special shout out to Joni Gerard for back and forth, continuing to try to make arrangements for me to escape from Washington. And when it was impossible to escape from Washington, that's when I took matters into my own hands. But I dutifully certainly want to thank Joni. Other than that, that's all I have. Alderman Fruin.
Mayor, one thing that I shared, I gave everybody a copy, hopefully you've got it in front of you. And this is prompted, I guess, by ongoing discussions we have and last couple meetings where we've talked about different programs, golf and BCPA and others. And one thing we need to work on is a council position, philosophy on subsidy levels for all of our programs. So what I've passed out, and for the benefit of the audience, this is nothing more than down the left column, you can put in any program we have. I have listed the Parks and Recreation programs. And at the top, what I've referenced is revenue, operating expense, capital improvements, and subsidy. I think we need to make this as simple as we can for the public and for ourselves. And I think something like this, a year-by-year basis, will help us determine what percentage that we're subsidizing many of our programs. I'm not locked into this format. Maybe Patty Lynn Silva or others on the council or the mayor or the manager might be able to come up with something different. But I think we really need to get a handle on our subsidy levels and have some philosophy. You know, in the last meeting we talked about a 1/4% sales tax dedicated amount. We've talked about enterprise funds. I think enterprises funds is confusing to everybody. So the other thing I would interject is, just because we have an enterprise fund, please correct me, but that doesn't mean that it has to fund itself 100%. So we could have an enterprise fund and say, whatever the cause might be our garbage and bulk waste and recycle. Maybe we're going to say it's going to be an enterprise fund, but our intention is to fund it at X percent. So I think this is just an opportunity for us to get a better handle on this, and if we can put it in simple terms like this, it might help the public understand it and reduce some of the questions that occur to us quite often. So I hope that people will look at this and give it some consideration, and I think it might reduce those questions that reoccur every year, every 2 years, every 3 years, as we have new council members and they say, what about this, what about that? So that's my thought for the night. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate that. City
Just
Manager Hales.
very briefly, on February 8th, we're going to have Mr. Bruce Cowan of Fiscal Choice, who is just completing our comprehensive fee study here, to make a brief presentation. And you will see more information regarding subsidies and his analysis of the fees the city has. So I think it's very timely. This idea will, I think, fit nicely with what he's going to begin to present and the work of the council going forward as we look to have only the council establish that cost reimbursement level or subsidy level for many of these user services that are financed, by fees. So anyway, watch for that presentation coming up in our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Terry, one thing I forgot to mention is these numbers in here are just make-up numbers.
Okay.
This is just examples, so.
Just for purposes of us understanding how the data would be displayed.
Thanks to Johnny for asking me that question, but made-up numbers.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anything else? Alderman Lara?
Just a quick positive note and just kind of a highlight to the public. We talk about a lot of cultural diversity, and we have a lot of culture downtown. Fish and Feather is going to be at the Interstate Center this coming weekend, noon to 7 on Friday, 9 to 7 on Saturday, and 9 to 4 on Sunday. And so a little cultural diversity for folks. I'm kind of a cat fisherman, and I enjoy that, and I have a number of friends that I'll probably meet out there this weekend. So looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you. At this point, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Alderwoman Howman, second by Alderwoman Schmidt. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. God, you're psychic.
I saw you out of the corner of my eye.